Hello, networkers, and welcome back to another episode of Ask the Network Engineer, where I answer one of your questions. In this episode, I wanted to continue our conversation of talking about network engineering plus programming, or in other words, the network developer position that I envision in the future, but really is called DevOps. So I want to talk more about that because I think that this will be a continued conversation for many different episodes. So let's make this as one of the episodes where we talk about DevOps in a little bit more clarity. So there were a couple of questions that I got that really got me inspired to start talking more about this on the channel. Looking ahead, that's the key thing. One question was posted by Cynthia, and he wanted advice on anything about DevOps and the responsibility or experience and knowledge required of a network engineer in that field, or how a network engineer can fit into that role. So that's a great question, and that probably is things I would talk about in many different episodes as well in the future. Another one was by iRobot, and he more or less kind of said that there seems to be a growing interest in web development and software development, things like that. And of course, if we talk about that as network engineers, we're talking about SDN, if that is something that is an open door for network engineers. So got lots of stuff to talk about, so I want to start talking about some of this now. Okay, so I think the very first thing that I probably want to say is, as network engineers, we are reaching a crossroads in the next couple of years. And we can continue on our current path of configuring firewalls and switches, routers, things like that. That need will still be there. I've been in a lot of customer environments and a lot of them have very unique requirements. So that is still there. But there's also the second path, which is looking ahead, and that is with DevOps. I'm seeing strong support and recommended learning for a lot of different things around DevOps. This includes things like deployment management, like Puppet, Chef, Ansible, things like that. Things like network programmability or programming using Python or PHP, which is the web development component for that. There's other things pertaining to REST APIs, and that's something that's very popular and something that SDN solutions heavily use. That applications can do API calls to manipulate the controller that can make certain routing decisions on the network fabric itself. So this is becoming a very strong thing that people are looking for, getting those kind of skills. And this is what we talk about DevOps. So here's a question. Is there an immediate action for you to start specializing in doing DevOps and network programmability? Short answer is not yet. SDN is maturing. It's evolving into SDN 2.0, which is what I think is the intent-based networking. I talked about that in another episode. But SDN is not at the level of doing full network automation, where it can automate your network that has switches and routers and firewalls and wireless access points and storage and computing, voice systems. You get the idea. A lot of campus user environments are very dynamic. They're not static like a data center environment where SDN is more applicable for it. So SDN is not at the level for doing that kind of automation at this time. I think the main thing that's really important here is you should always be proactive. Always be proactive, never be reactive. And definitions here, just to make sure that, I want you guys to really understand what I'm talking about here. When I say reactive, this is more when we talk about a problem, right? When a problem occurs, is it a reactive or is it proactive? When an issue occurs, we basically react to it. Like, oh, a switch is down. Okay, now I have to do something to troubleshoot and to bring the switch back up. Where proactive means, how about I build an infrastructure that if this switch fails, my network can still continue to operate. So there's minimal downtime or impact to my customers or to the users. That's called being proactive. But proactive can also be very expensive. Okay, so I just want to give that definition out the way so that you're clear what I mean by proactive. So when you're in your career, this has nothing to do with networking, by the way. This is anything in any kind of field or basically in the IT field. You have to always look ahead. You got to kind of look ahead like, okay, we're right here. As I said right now, data center and security, those are very hot items. Get that experience, okay? That's really important, okay? Getting involved in cloud computing environments, okay? That's the hot stuff. But you got to also look ahead as well. You got to always do that. You have these two, I'm trying to get this in the video here. So we're right here, we're up close and we're dealing with that, but you got to look ahead because technology changes. I've seen engineers be left behind quickly because they're so focused on right here, which makes sense. I understand that entirely because it's hard to envision what this looks like. This really becomes more visible because of experience. And I've been doing this for like 20 years. So I kind of see how things usually progress. So, but you got to also look ahead here. And I basically look ahead and say, yeah, there's DevOps and network programmability at a senior level. Okay, because this will give you more opportunities. Yes, you have this experience, so you're employable now, but you're getting yourself prepared and ready for what's going to happen in the future. So that when this happens, okay, so it'll be something else. So when it gets to here, the immediate will be DevOps. You will have that particular experience. So for you, be like, great, I've been already preparing for that. I have the education. I've been focusing on the experience of doing that. So you'll be basically up to speed when that time comes. But again, you got to also be proactive and look ahead. Therefore, continue your education of the network foundation. Learn about routing and switching, data center technologies, security, cloud computing. Get that kind of experience, continue that. That's not going to change because that is in immediate demand right now, okay? Now, in terms of being proactive and looking ahead, just get exposure to programming. Like Python. Python, again, is very popular, is my choice, but a lot of network engineers also love Python. Get exposure to PHP. That's the web development stuff as well. They're very similar. There's conditions, there's functions. They're all the same thing. The syntax is different. So that's the great thing about programming. I've done programming from PHP, Perl, Python, Apple iOS. They're the same thing. The syntax is different. So, but get that exposure though. Try to get exposure to Python programming, and not trying to do a sales plug though. We have a Python training course that goes over the basics and how to build network-based applications to kind of show you what some of the things that you can do using Python. But besides network programming, you can also get exposure to REST APIs. APIs is a big thing that is a big part of SDN and the future of basically doing API calls to manipulate or to do particular changes in behaviors on the network. But there's also a growing interest with open networking or open solutions. And Facebook's network, for example, their super massive data center environment is really based on open solutions. And that is something that is a growing thing that a lot of consulting companies are trying to get their staff to learn about open solutions, because it is something that a lot of companies are making their own switches. Facebook has their own switches, by the way. Okay, they have their own top of rack switches. They have their own spine switches. It's under, they call it a different name. They don't call it spine leaf switches. It goes under a different name, but it's the same stuff regardless. But they have their own switches because the ASIC providers basically has been really locked in with only working with like the Ciscos and the Junipers, and no one else can get those blueprints. So then they can use the ASICs and build their own switches. That changed. So now they have opened it up so that other people can actually make their own switches, right? You take the ASICs, which is basically the data forwarding, the data plane, and you craft your own switches. And that's what Facebook has done. So they basically took that and did their own open switches, and you can buy them, but you can also make your own. They have their own kind of data sheets for all that kind of stuff. The kind of stuff I like to read on the side. Because again, proactive, looking ahead. So open solution is something that is a very growing thing. And that's why one of the very first things I want to do for our training is SDN using OpenFlow, but doing it in a practical way, using physical switches, HP switches, Cisco switches, and of course showing you how to do, using Python, how to do API calls to an SDN controller to manipulate how traffic is forwarding between hosts across the data center switches. I'm going to be teaching you all of that in that course. That's why I'm very excited about it. It's going to take some time, but that is something, again, being proactive and giving you guys the kind of experience that, one, you can learn about SDN, learn about open solutions, learn about Python programming, and about API calls. These are some of the things that are the main focus of this training course that I'm calling SDN using OpenFlow training series. And we are done with this episode. So if you have any questions about being a network engineer, post those questions below in the comments, and your question can come up in a future episode on this channel. So thank you for watching this video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and support us at routhub.net. And until next time, keep networking.